Hi, this is Sid, and you're listening to The Economic Story. In this episode, I plan to review the answer to the interesting question, what's the connection between inflation and immigration? In the last 2 to 3 years, the developed world has experienced very high inflation. And in the last couple of years, immigration has also been relatively high. Not only that, even during the 80s, there was a coexistence of high inflation and high immigration, at least by the relative standards of that day and age. That leads us to an obvious question. Is that just a coincidence, or is there a connection between the two? While coincidences do occur from time to time, there is also a number of connections that we fail to uncover. In this case, there is at least one connection. What is it? Well, let's explore. During periods of high inflation, prices rise. It starts with the economy heating up a little bit. At this point in time, everybody is happy. Prices are rising, but not that fast. Salaries are also rising, and people have enough to pay for their expenses and lead a good life. So everybody is happy. Eventually, though, things start to go out of control. Salaries stop rising as fast as the prices. People start noticing inflation, and people start complaining because they have genuine difficulty paying for their expenses with their income. In the presence of central government, the blame obviously lands at their doorstep. Now, when the pain starts getting unbearable and the complaining starts to become very loud, the government moves into action. And the head of the government might ask, what shall we do? There are no easy answers in this case. The central banks typically would suggest raising interest rates, which they would anyway do. But interest rate hikes and any of those kind of tough measures is typically never popular with politicians. So they go looking. With regards to the goods, they can't control the demand side. Fixes on the supply side are possible from a fiscal standpoint by the government, but they tend to take too long. So from a political standpoint, it's never an attractive option. When it comes to labor, they again do not have much of an option in regards to demand. But on the supply side, they realize they do have some control, and that is via immigration. So what they do is they basically go ahead and slightly open up that immigration tap. And it basically starts with a flow of immigrants into the system. At a very high level, the fix appears very simple. More supply of labor brings in more competition into the market and reduces prices. That essentially would lead to a fixing of inflation. But there are certain caveats that you need to look at as well. First of all, let's talk about high-skilled laborers. Let's divide the labor inflow into two segments. First one is high-skilled laborers. Highly skilled laborers, difficult to find. And even if you find them, they don't come in large numbers just because of the training process and the time it takes to train labor. And typically whoever has been trained, they tend to get settled in the economy where they get trained, or at least a good portion of them. So this is something they would get in terms of whatever they can grab, they would get, but it's not going to be the focal area in terms of volume. The volume comes from the unskilled labor or the low-skilled labor. That's where most of the numbers come in, and government grabs them, and they come in and they get deployed either directly or after some amount of training. This deployment happens obviously at a very, very rapid pace, and typically that also means there are certain compromises to quality that does happen during this process. One outcome of that is the fact that overall quality in the economic system tends to go down because of this rapid deployment of low quality, less trained labor within the economy. But anyways, overall, it does seem like it solves the problem. So anyhow, the objective typically is sooner or later it's met. Inflation eventually comes down, but that doesn't mean that the whole exercise doesn't leave any after effects as well. One we did cover. There are a few others. Okay. A recession typically follows a high immigration situation. During a recession, labor demand drops, people lose jobs, and it becomes difficult to find new ones. Dissent grows for both citizens as well as new immigrants. Now, immigration becomes a major political issue. This eventually leads to tightening of immigration standards. Some of those who had recently immigrated end up leaving, while those trying to immigrate find it difficult to immigrate. This basically eventually all ends up at square one. So what's the lesson out of this connection between inflation and immigration? Well, there are many, but let me pick two. If you are a citizen of a country and you don't like too much of immigration, or at least you don't like too much of immigration of unskilled laborers, just think twice before you raise that price or ask for a higher salary, because eventually that might end up in inflation, higher inflation, and which might lead to immigration. Now, if you're a prospective immigrant planning to immigrate to a new country but finding it difficult, just keep an eye on that inflation meter. If it starts to tick up, your chances are likely to improve. Well, that's it for today. Thank you. Bye.